time. Thank you all for joining, wherever you are in the world. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Marius Garella. I'm the head of marketing at Roches Global Hospitality Education, one of the leading hospitality colleges in the world. First of all, on behalf of the Roche management and all our team and everybody's here today, I want to give you a warm welcome. I hope you are all safe and sound wherever you are in the world, having some time at home. And we want to provide you with some interesting content around what's been happening in hospitality and digital transformation. To do so, I have a great guest speaker today. His name is Scott Dahl. He's our program director for a new master we are putting together in hospitality strategy and digital transformation. And he's going to be your host for today. He put together a beautiful panel together, so I leave it to you, Scott. Just for the logistics, everybody can ask questions in the chat. Feel free to do so. We'll compile the questions, have them at the end or throughout if there's something really interesting word to take. So I'll be moderating the questions. And anything also in terms of you cannot hear properly or anything like that, please just write it in the chat and we'll be monitoring as we go through. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mario. Thank you for everyone that made it in today, and thanks for our panelists for attending. I'd just like to briefly introduce the panel, and then we'll get an opportunity to listen to everything that they have in their area of expertise as we move through the program. But Mario, if you could switch to the next slide for me, that would be great. Okay, thank you. So in the middle, we have a gentleman by the name of Max Starkov. Max has been a friend for a very long time. We're definitely the gray-haired representatives on the panel for sure. And Max and I got to know each other because Max was one of the pioneers in hospitality digital marketing, and very specifically in what we're going to talk about, which is being an outside service provider to the industry and a number of the careers that are coming up there. Max also is an adjunct professor at NYU in the hospitality department. And Max is one of the visiting professors for the new Masters in Digital Hospitality, or in Hospitality Strategy and Digital Transformation that we're putting together at Roches and that we're going to be speaking about today. Our next panelist is a gentleman by the name of Frederic Toiteau. I haven't known Frederic for quite as long, but Frederic and I sit together on the HSMAI Revenue Optimization panel. And Frederic is also a visiting professor in the Masters of Hospitality Strategy and Digital Transformation degree. He's going to be teaching leadership. He is also now, I think, Frederic, when I give you an opportunity to speak, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about your transition as well. But until very recently, Frederic was director of, he was vice president of development and learning in specifically the revenue aspects for Accor. So Frederic had a big position with a lot to do with organizational design and leadership and training and those kinds of things. And he teaches the organizational piece of our degree. And finally, our third panelist is a gentleman by the name of Mauricio Callon. I've known Mauricio the least, to be honest with you. Mauricio is a scientist. Mauricio is a specialist in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And he teaches a course that is designed to help people understand how to manage big data. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But he's definitely the geek on our panel, although he is one of the most grounded scientists I've ever met at the same time. So super excited to have all the panelists on. We're going to talk a little bit about everybody's area of expertise, and then we're going to kind of open it up for questions for people. So go ahead, Mario, jump to the next slide if you don't mind. Before we get into that much deeper, I wanted to talk a little bit about the reason we're together. And the reason that that this degree has been put together, and quite frankly, something that's happening to the industry that's been going on for quite a while, but is really starting to get even greater momentum, and that's digital transformation. Why a master's in hospitality strategy and digital transformation? And the reason is because it's a call directly from the industry. We've been very good in higher education at training luxury general managers, but when people want to use those skills for something else in hospitality, we basically put it upon either the person or the employer to take those skills and turn them into transferable skills to some of the other parts of the business. And this degree specifically addresses that. This degree specifically is looking at the commercial aspects, and it's looking at the parts of hospitality that are extremely dynamic and moving very quickly. If you think about most of hospitality, very traditional bricks and mortar business, and yet digital transformation has been going on in a while in hospitality. With Expedia and Booking.com, we've been online for more than 20 years. Yet many industries are talking about becoming digital today. So in that sense, hospitality really is at the cutting edge of digitalization. And we want to be at the cutting edge of preparing the leaders for tomorrow for those tasks. So that's why the new masters. Next slide for me. There you go. Okay, I've actually already said that, so we can talk about the next one. So the degree is broken up into 2 semesters and an internship component. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit about the content, and then we'll get into speaking some more about what's happening in the business. The 2 semesters are broken into 3 modules. The first module is the tactics. So the first module has a lot to do with giving people the building blocks that they're going to be using later. This happens to be the module that Professor Cayone teaches in. You'll see there's a database and database management and artificial intelligence course there. He teaches in that module. The second module is putting those things together. It's creating a strategy. So we take the building blocks and now we start to work them all together. And you'll see that there is, for example, the Advanced Digital Marketing Strategies course that Mr. Starkov teaches is in that module. And all of those things go together to taking the skills that you learn in the first module and putting them into a strategy. And then finally, the third module is leadership. As I like to tell people, once people get involved, everything gets screwed up. And so we have to start dealing with that. That's the module that Mr. Toito teaches in, and that's all about once people get involved. So you'll see it's project management, it's developing a customer experience, it's developing a culture in the digital transformation era, et cetera. So this degree, although it's got a number of technical components that you can see, it's super important to stress it's not a technical degree, it's a leadership degree. And sometimes when I describe it to people, when I'm having fun describing it, I like to describe it as giving you a dangerous amount of knowledge in all these different areas so that you'd be prepared to lead the people that do those tasks on an ongoing basis. Jump ahead for me. Okay. A couple other things while we're on that page, or if we can talk about them here. We've incorporated several professional certifications into the degree for a couple of reasons. First of all, we want to stay very close to the industry. I think it's super important to consider employability from the beginning. And so by using the professional certifications, we're sure that we're teaching exactly what the industry believes to be the best practice and the current practice. It's also a part of the industry that a lot of times it has a circular problem in that in order to get started in it, you need experience. And so one of the beauties with the way that we teach in the Swiss institutions is by incorporating internships, by incorporating capstone projects, and a more applied version of learning, we really kind of give you some tools to help you overcome that initial experience requirement. The other thing we do that's super cool in the degree that keeps us very close to the business is we take a business field trip. And we specifically choose Paris because it gives us a lot of different components that are all in one place. First of all, it's a hotel degree, and we can see some of the great hotels of the world, and we can see how those hotels are dealing with digitalization. But more importantly, perhaps, Paris is one of the centers of entrepreneurism and hospitality right now. So we get an opportunity to see startups, we get an opportunity to see innovation. And because of connections that we have there, we get to see them in 2 very interesting formats. We get to see innovation in the co-working space, 4 people, 2 of them still living at home with their parents, just getting by. As they're creating a startup. And then we can also see innovation in a more institutional way because Accor's global headquarters is located in Paris, and Accor has an innovation lab that gives us an opportunity to see how a large company that is not probably very well set up to innovate on the surface, what they do to overcome their size and everything. And so the business trip is fantastic for us in terms of really giving us an opportunity to take the knowledge that we learned in the first 2 modules and really see them out in the field and to help people be able to not just understand the theory, but also just explain the theory, have a conversation about the theory that's comfortable, understand how the theory applies in the real world and things like that. So the business trip is a key component of learning experience for us. Okay, next one. Next slide for me. There we go. Okay, so let's talk about roles now. We'll start other panelists involved. The first one is how have traditional hotel roles evolved as digitalization is the industry. And it's I think really important to understand that for me, for example, when I graduated from hotel school in 1986, some of the major companies that exist in the business today weren't there. There was no internet, therefore there was no Booking.com, there was no Expedia. But these traditional roles have now become digital as well. So let's take a look at the organizational chart of a hotel. Click that slide. There we go. Okay, so think of this, actually, no, click back one for me. Click back one more. There we go. Okay, so if you can see here, this is really kind of the traditional organization structure of a hotel, and with the exception of the title of revenue manager, it's existed that way for a very long time. I have the other departments off to the side because I'm not really speaking about those very much today. That's something that is an industry in higher education we've been doing a good job with for a very long time, no question about it. And Roches has alumni all over the world in really high profile GM positions. Even the president of Rosewood is a Roche alumni. That's the more traditional path. So go ahead and click one time for me. Let's get rid of those jobs. We're not talking about those. And let's talk about the positions in the property that are in the commercial disciplines. So at the property level still, not those ones that came up above, our directors of sales have now become much more digital in the way they do business. It's absolutely important for them to understand digital marketing, which we'll talk about and we have a whole position that's evolved since all of this has taken place, which is revenue manager, which is responsible for developing the strategy. And if you were to complete our degree, those are the type of positions that would be very logical positions for you to progress into. But then there's a whole set of careers that many people are not aware of. And the first is the above property functions in hotels. I had the fortune of being more than 20 years a vice president of revenue management for several companies, and it was really great. It was great career progression for me. There was constantly places for me to continue to move up. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is help people understand those career opportunities and showcase those. And then click one more time. And then digitalization has also brought about a whole new, oops, go back the other way here. Let's see, click forward. Okay, good. So it's also brought about a whole new set of careers that didn't exist 20 years ago, and that's in companies that help hotels to perform. So there are distribution companies like Booking.com and Expedia. There are marketing agencies, including digital marketing agencies like we're going to talk about in a second with Mr. Starkov. And then there are technology providers that we'll talk a little bit with Mr. Cayon, but that are in a number of ways bringing incredible innovation to a business that is, for the most part, not really one that is super interested in changing. So, and that's what I think is very dynamic about the digital part of hospitality, and it's what I think we really would be very well served in the industry. Careers more for people that they would prepare themselves that way. Okay, so roll ahead, Mario, for me, if you don't mind. Okay, so as we talk about those traditional, oops, actually go back. I'm sorry. As we talk about traditional jobs, I'd like to call it Frederick Toiteau. Frederick, as I mentioned, was in charge of leadership and development in those areas. And Frederick, if you wouldn't mind, talk a little bit about how those positions have evolved since you've been in the business, Stephen.
Yes, thank you so much, Scott, for having me in this panel. I think it's a great topic to cover, and especially in those crazy times that we are living in. Let's not forget that things are quite hectic at the moment, and we should not forget that the digital tools and the digital processes that we have in place are going to be of a much help for hoteliers all around the world to be able to probably rebound and get the best out of this unfortunate situation. So for me, the digital part of the jobs in the hospitality business is now critical, and I'm so happy to see institutions like Les Roches, creating a master in strategy and digital transformation, because this is all about what we need at the moment, especially for young professionals who are going to start their careers. Why? Because the jobs today, they have become digitalized. I mean, this is in our life, in our private life, but as well in the job. And, I know very well, that, Scott, the jobs of revenue managers, sales, digital marketing, and even in the operations, and all those jobs today cannot go together without the digital aspect. So it's very, very important to take that into account. And if we leave the digital aspect on the side for the moment, I just want to say as well that we see that those jobs are evolving very much in terms of responsibilities and tasks that are expected from them. Why? Because we have the effect of the, of the digitalization coming into us. So I'm talking about the machines. I'm talking about all those systems that we have in place now, like revenue management systems that are making a great job, of course, and that are taking some of the responsibilities, traditional responsibilities and tasks that we knew were, the main job of for sales, revenue, and marketing managers. They are kind of disappearing because the machines are doing it. So tomorrow, and it's starting already today, we have to have young professionals who are able to have a kind of comprehensive understanding of what it takes to optimize the revenue of a hotel. And that means that they probably need to have some great revenue expertise, revenue management expertise, pricing expertise, distribution knowledge, but also be very good at understanding what Google and Booking.com and all those tools are, requesting for you to be visible on the web and to be able to attract your clients. You have to know about data. You have to know about, being able to do a sound reporting of your performance, and all this means that you have to have the capacity to have a good overview of and to be capable to have the skills for doing so. So we need absolutely to change our point of view in our recruitment process, in our development process, in the hotels and in the headquarters of the big hospitality companies. Because today, what we need is not only revenue managers on one side, it's not only sales managers, it's not only marketing managers. We need people who can do all that together. So I can see that Les Roches is really going that direction. I'm very, very proud to be part of this adventure, because I think that this is exactly the strategy that you need to follow here. Another point that you are, yeah.
Oh no, I was going to ask you a follow-up question. So, you mentioned about the various skills. I was last week. We have a weekly streaming show called the Digital Transformation Happy Hour at Les Roches, and I had a guest on, a woman by the name of Carol Davies, who's a vice president of Driftwood Hospitality, a U.S. And we were talking about similar things. And one of the things she mentioned is that they don't have as much difficulty filling some of the later progression career positions, but that the entry-level jobs, sales, revenue, and those kind of things, they have a very difficult time filling them, and that it actually very often they hire people and there's a high failure rate because there's not a great understanding even what the job is. And so there's a lot of concern. So there tends to be a tendency to promote from within, because at least I know those people and I have a better chance of being able to make those decisions. And so she said there's tremendous career opportunities for people, but they have to know how to align themselves for it. Do you have similar experience? And if so, what kind of advice would you give someone that was interested in going that direction?
Yes. So, the thing is that, Scott, those skills and capabilities that I'm talking about here may not be at the moment in the hotels. They may not be present because the people that are working right now in the hotel may not be trained, developed, and educated with those skills. So it's a question of either having a very, let's say, ambitious training and development programs to educate and to raise the skills of the current staff in the hotels, or sometimes to bring some fresh blood from outside, people who have been educated into who are digital natives, or who have the capacity to really understand what it takes to bid for keywords on Google, or to be able to negotiate sales contracts on the digital platforms, or to be able to play with revenue management systems who are themselves built with very smart algorithms that require an understanding of data intelligence. So that's really tricky for the hotels because it means that they have always to have, they have to raise the bar, and sometimes the expertise is not lying in the hotels. So this is where the headquarters can help a lot as well, because hopefully when you work for Accor, Hilton, IG, or Marriott, you have this capacity to interact with your headquarters and your regional offices, and then to bring some of this knowledge and expertise into the hotels. But when you are a hotel that is pretty much, isolated or, independent, remote, you have to think about potentially bringing this expertise from the outside.
So, Fred, before we move on to outside the hotel, I was wondering, just to kind of help people understand, would you mind taking an example of an entry-level position or a position you think someone, a revenue management position, or possibly even just a revenue analyst position, and kind of, going through what a potential hypothetical career path might be for that person?
Well, yes, very good question. At the end of the day, to become let's say a current, very efficient general manager in a hotel, when you think about it, where can she or he make the difference today in 2020? If you ask me, the difference will be made not anymore at making sure that the breakfast is warm and ready, because that is something that people have already understood and they know how to do that. The service side is also very, very important, but that's something that with a good training you can have and acquire as a competency. Where things are getting really complicated is to get general managers who can really understand and work with data, with the figures, the statistics, the reporting aspect of the job, because it is becoming extremely complicated for those people to master everything that is required from them, from the owners, from the headquarters, from the clients, and from all the third parties. So it means that the young professionals that we are going to train in Les Roches, for instance, if we tell them that a job of revenue manager or digital marketer or that data analyst is at the end of the day the critical aspect of what a GM needs to understand today and tomorrow, it means that those entry-level positions become the role, let's say the main path for succeeding and becoming a senior manager tomorrow in a hotel. I strongly believe that that if you want to become a GM in a 4 or 5 star hotel in 10 years, you have to be right now from the school able to get those extremely critical skills that are revolving around the digital aspect of the job.
Cool. Thank you, Frederic. You brought up the perfect way to segue to having a little bit of a discussion about things that go on and the career opportunities that now are presented outside of the hotels. So clearly, in traditional hotels, there is great mobility upwards for the people that have mastery of these digital skills. As you mentioned, it's really the new leadership currency. It's really a piece that's super important. And we're not talking about you need to be able to build a website, but the issue is you need to be able to manage a person that's building a website. And we all know that there's not very many leaders that can lead people well that don't have any idea what those people are doing. You have to have some skills. But the reason I mentioned it was a connection was because I still to this day in one of my courses use a slide that I got from this next panelist. And it has everything to do with what you just said, Frederic, and that is that we've pretty much made hotels as efficient as they can be. We've cut all the costs. We've figured out all the ways to without destroying service, we've made them very efficient. So the final frontier for more profitability, and I'm going to quote Max Starkov right now, is driving revenue. It's getting more revenue in the door and increasing the top line, and in some cases, decreasing the distribution costs that we pay to get our reservations. So before I have you speak, Max, I just want to say, you and I both come from a time period that we were in the business before a lot of the big players were there. And now some of the biggest players in the industry don't even own hotels. And that's just one of the categories of opportunities for people for careers, but also one of the categories of major service providers that have now started to create really an almost a side industry of providing service to hotels, but not actually being in the hotel business. So with that, Max Starkov, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I've got a couple of questions for you too.
Hello, everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. And actually, Le Roche new master's degree is right on time. First of all, looking at this slide that we have here, we have to understand that hospitality is more than just beds and I would say a restaurant and a lobby with a fireplace and nice looking front desk clerks. Hospitality has become all about technology, and there's a reason for that, because our guest, today's guest, is technology savvy guest. Just imagine what you do personally at your home, at your work, when you're entertaining yourself. It's all about using technology. The same guests are coming to our hotels, and quite unfortunately, in many cases, they see a technology-averse institution called the hotel, where the Wi-Fi is not working, where they cannot hook up or they cannot dial in or log in into their Netflix, for example, in their room, and they're still being offered services that the technology, I would say, deficient. And if you look at everything in our industry, from hotel management, it's all about having the best of breed technology systems and applications, from the PMS to HR, even with algorithms that automatically sift through resumes, housekeeping, scheduling, for example, all the back office automation, and then you have the distribution side, from the old-fashioned GDSs to the central reservation systems, of course, the online travel agencies, as mentioned, the booking engine on the hotel website, channel managers, APIs to all of these different pipelines, if you will, for the hotel inventory and availability. And so revenue management, of course, the revenue management systems of today use artificial intelligence on the back end to sift through mountains of data. Rate shopping technology, the same is with customer relationship management and loyalty, from the data management platforms, communication managers, and so forth. Marketing, I mean, the website itself is the digital portrait of the hotel in cyberspace. So that's where people decide whether to come and stay at your hotel or they don't, or they go to your competition. So starting from the website, the content management system technology that you choose, social media technology, all of the web analytics, all of the search engine optimization technology, the programmatic data marketing, and so forth. The list goes on and on and on and on. And then reputation management. It's again the online reputation management technology with all of the customer sentiment indexes and how they apply to your pricing, how they apply to your service. So everything that happens at the hotel is touches technology, and the main reason is because our guests, our clients that we serve, they want this technology, and they use this the technology in their everyday lives, and we have to simply respond in our industry. So and the sad part is that very few hospitality schools, first of all, teach technology and digital transformation. And by the way, talking about technology, this is all digital technology. All of these applications are in the cloud. All of these applications are accessible 24/7. So very few hospitality schools teach digital, teach the technology, teach digital transformation. So that's why Roches is at the forefront, and I'm very happy to be part of this whole program.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate it. We're super happy to have you involved as well. You know, you and I got to know each other a long time ago when you didn't really have very many competitors in the very beginning. And now what's happened, which is very interesting, is your space has become one that is kind of the new frontier for entrepreneurs in hospitality, with a lot of smaller niche types of agencies popping up to deal with just in one country, to deal just with one cultural environment, for example. So I was wondering if you would, you know, as you talk about those things, every one of those has exploded exponentially. You mentioned rate shopping, for example. I'm not sure if everyone that's listening knows exactly what that is, but obviously when you're pricing hotels, and I'm sure as consumers, most of us know, hotel pricing is very dynamic, and so we're constantly looking at information to get it correct, and one is looking at the competitors. You know, when you and I first started out in the business, we did rate shopping. The lady who did, or not lady, but the person that worked the switchboard on the overnight shift used to call around to all the hotels once a night and ask what they charge. That has evolved into a massive company, or several massive companies, that as all of this digitalization has exploded, and now you're not just buying your room from the hotel, but you're buying your room from one of 100 places, then the technology to be able to do that better is following along behind and creating one after another new business opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the really emerging technology when we talk to Mauricio. But just Max, how is that, you know, as someone who is kind of a, you know, and again, I'm old too, so it's okay for me to say this, as someone who's a little bit of an elder statesman in the business, how has it evolved? Where do you see it going? I think that'd be a real fascinating question for you to answer, but you know, it's changed so much since we got involved. Well, tell me about it.
Well, I mean, of course, I mean, let's put it this way. When I started in the business, there were maybe 20 technology vendors around the world that served hospitality. Now there, I mean, thousands of them. And the main reason is that simply technology has entered every single aspect of our lives. And as the slide illustrates, it's no longer elevators and property management system and you know, like washing machines that are technology at the hotel, but everything else. I mean, starting from sensors which sense whether there's somebody in the room, whether there's a guest in the room, and then if there's no guest in the room, automatically all of the utilities go to a safe mode. That's how the property you know, saves on utility bills and so forth. There's so many other aspects of the Internet of Things and all of the issue resolution technology that the hoteliers now must use in order to provide better service. So all of these vendors that we're talking about, where do they find their employees? I mean, this is one of the questions. And I'll give an example with my company, which I led until recently. Next guest, we're 150 employees around the world. Most of them came out of hospitality schools, and many of them learned the business. They stayed with us, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, some even longer, and then many of them now work at major hotel companies around the world in, I would say, managerial, vice presidential type of positions, and they had no issues finding the job simply because they were trained to think as digital marketers, as digital technologists, and they understand the full. If you move to the next slide, I think that there should be another slide with the customer journey that we use in our industry. People who understand how hotel guests from the dreaming, the planning, the booking phase, the experiencing phase, and then the sharing phase work, and all the different technologies that you use in order to engage, in order to acquire, and of course, in order to retain these guests through the 5 different phases of the digital customer journey. These are the people that are more than welcome at many of the, I would say, global hotel chains. So I have a lot of former colleagues, employees that I have hired out of hospitality schools, from Boston University Hospitality, NYU, where I teach for 20 semesters already, NYU Hospitality, the Cornell Hospitality, to George Washington University Hospitality, and to Las Vegas Hospitality, and so forth. These people are now working for Hyatt, working for Marriott, working for Hilton, working for in leadership positions, and the main reason is that they know more than I would say all of the typical employees at those hotels combined. And we give them, when you work at a company like this, like Next Guest Digital, you get several master's degrees in digital in the course of 2-3 years. So that's the and by the way, it's exactly the same at any of the other vendors that we discussed in the previous slide, from property management systems to revenue management systems. They need hospitality trained young employees, which will give them the hospitality perspective, which will give them the knowledge of the hospitality field, and then by acquiring all of the technologists and technology strategy skills, these employees in the future can do a lot of useful things, I would say, a lot of good things for our industry, and can prosper either working at major hotel chains, independent hotel ownership groups, or they can start a business of their own. And I mean, the history of hospitality technology is full of such examples.
Scott, can I take a question from the audience?
Of course.
So somebody, Bertha in the audience, is asking, how do you guys see new hospitality concepts that integrate co-working and co-living spaces into the traditional hotel setup? How do they affect the transformation of the industry and the digitalization in particular? So we're talking about, co-working, co-living plus hotels, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have a number of such startups already, that they focus on the digital nomads, as they call them of nowadays, typically younger people who are digitally savvy, who can work from any point, from any place in the world, remotely and so forth, and they are looking for a place to stay and a place to work from for an extended period of time. So not perhaps living there 365 days of the year, but living for a few months in Buenos Aires, and then living a few months in London, and so forth. So that's what I believe we're talking about in this pure co-working, co-living space at hotels. Selina is one of those companies that does this. Sandor here in the United States, in San Francisco. So the 2 of those companies that already exist, they're all unicorns, so at least they try to be, like $1 billion valuation type of companies. But I believe the traditional hotels that have plenty of conference rooms that are unused, plenty of grandiose, I would say, lobbies that are unused, and plenty of common spaces that are unused, I would say, they will start transforming those places into co-working places, so that you can stay at the hotel, work in a professional work environment, co-sharing environment, co-working environment, and then meet with local clients, for example, local prospects, and I think that this will become a more common phenomenon in the future. Basically, create mini WeWork type of co-working spaces at the hotel that can be rented by locals or by people traveling and staying at the hotel. And again, we in our industry are transforming, and I believe that this will be one of the directions.
Mike, would you mind repeating just the name of the two companies you just mentioned? People have asked.
Sandor
Sandor.
and Selena.
Perfect, thank you.
Frederic, you seem like you're almost about to come out of your chair at one point there. You have something to add, so share your comment.
Yes, I raised the finger, but Mr. Starkov said most about it already. But I just want to reiterate, I have been a revenue manager for many years at Accor, and I have been, like most of the revenue managers, very how can I say, frustrated by the fact that there are so many spaces all year, all day, every week, every year that are left unsold. And when I say spaces, I mean spaces everywhere. It could be a restaurant, it could be seminars, it could be the lobby of the hotel. And what I really believe is that digitalization is going to fill those spaces. Why? Because people now will have the possibility not only to know that we are selling those spaces, but they will come with their own devices and will be able to work, to do whatever they have to do in hotels that are open 24 hours a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. So we have the possibility to really maximize the revenue of our hotels in the coming years by taking advantage of those unsold spaces that suddenly could become a great opportunity thanks to digitalization. Because you have to understand that until now it was really difficult for us to fill those spaces because people, didn't know and couldn't come in. And Mr. Starkov, talked about the local clients. So we are not talking about the residents of the hotel. We can also talk about the locals, the inhabitants close to the hotels, who sometimes would love to have a space that is quiet, that is, set up professionally, so that they can run a meeting, have a call, or do whatever they have to do in terms of, having some activities in their life. So yeah, definitely that's going to be probably a great added value of digitalization in the coming years. And it means that for us in the schools, as teachers, lecturers, and master coordinators, we have to think about that and to make our students understand that digitalization is not only about selling rooms through the web, but also selling so many other services and spaces that have been left unused for too long.
I mean, I think you brought up a fascinating point that is worth bringing a little more attention to, and that is that it's not just for the guests, right? It's for the locals. If Airbnb has taught us anything, it's that people are looking for a more local experience. And so I think that these concepts that are coming out, there's actually one that I happen to love. It's called Zoku. It's a really cool concept. The hotel's really nice. The design fits me. Most of the furniture, I'm trying to figure out how I can buy it for my own house. I really like it. But I think that there's two pieces of this. I think there's going to be brands and hotels that position themselves based on that innovation. But I think just like everyone else is realizing that this, the co-working concept is a good concept. More and more people are on the road. They have flexible office when they travel. I could be doing something for leisure, but I need to sit down and take a conference call and respond to some emails for a couple hours. I think that as hotels start to understand that, we have the facilities that are unused, exactly as you point out. And so we can use that space, but at the same time, we can create an environment that fosters more of that local connection for our true out-of-town guests. So I think it really, it has an opportunity to move beyond being a niche that is, hotels are built around co-working space, and it has the chance to kind of become as important to a hotel as a gym is to a business traveler, for example, as some of those basic amenities. The fact that this is a lobby where people are there, there's some activity. If I don't want to work in my little small funny shaped desk in my room, if I want to go someplace, then there's this great facility that's got some life. And you know, if you think about, go to a Starbucks sometime, there's 50 people in there, all of them strangers, none of them interacting, but they're not alone. You know, I mean, it's a really interesting phenomenon, right? So I think it's a really cool question, and I think it's an interesting question. But I think personally, I think the evolution will be more that more and more types of hotels will have more of that stuff, and not so much that hotels start to become specific to it. I think I don't think it's only a certain demographic. I think it's a lot of market segments that want that sort of thing. So we got on the topic of innovation. So that gives us an opportunity to make a jump right to our final panelist. Mauricio Cayón is a specialist in machine learning, in data management, but I think his passion really is innovation, and I think that's what took him in that direction. And I think also Max mentioned that there's a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities that are coming with this, and he mentioned two really powerful nuggets of wisdom, which are going to be a perfect transition to Mauricio, and that is that there used to be 20 technology vendors. There's a property management system called Opera that anyone who's been anywhere near the hotel business understands. And the thing that about Opera is it does 90% of the functions in the building. It does them all pretty well, with the exception of the front office stuff, none of them perfect, but that's how you used to have to build it. But as Max, he mentioned two things. He mentioned cloud and he mentioned APIs, which is a really interesting concept. And those two innovations have made it possible to have a technology solution, but you don't have to be the technology vendor for the hotel. You can just deal with your one small solution. So with APIs, which is very simply application protocol interface, it's kind of like USB. It's now there's a standardized way to plug things in, and that's created this environment of fantastic opportunity for people who have a niche solution. If you can come up with some way to automate the PBX function, you don't also have to have a housekeeping function. You can make the PBX function, and because of the API, you can connect to it, and because of the cloud, you don't have the big upfront investment in it as well that you used to have with servers and installations and things like that. So Mauricio, you're our futurist on the panel for sure. Tell us a little bit about kind of what's happening. We hear a lot about AI, but I think we hear the hype about AI. What's really going on with AI?
Okay, thank you, Scott, for the introduction. Yeah, what's about AI? And first thing I would like to say, because it's a common misunderstanding, is that machine learning is AI. Actually, machine learning is the AI we have today, in the sense that artificial intelligence in general is a broad concept. And if we go and look up in the dictionaries, encyclopedias, or other sources, we can just understand that many just compared to a machine that can replace some cognitive tasks of living beings, and they can be humans or animals. Of course, our algorithms are not at that point. What we have today is statistical models that can auto-regulate, so they can adapt and to the samples, to the data they see. That's what we have today. And maybe it cannot sound much, but actually, if we know how to use them, this could be applied to all the different domains, actually applications, and in the different segments we saw in the previous slides, in different manners. Because machine learning, it is powerful, but it's just a tool. What's really disruptive is the use that you do of that tool. And of course, it is important then, and that's why I think that it's a brilliant idea to have a master as you are organizing, Scott, because it is important to use properly that tool to know how it works. Not to be able to code, of course, but to understand what are the possibilities, and then to be able to talk to the people who should code for you. Because behind what you should draw, it's a strategy. It's a strategy who's able anyway to consider the capacity of that technology and how you can make money or anyway value out of it. That's the main I think take-home message. And that's why also it's important to understand what data is and how it should be treated, because the algorithms are as good as your data are good. So that's the main point. Once you are really familiar with machine learning, you understand that actually 80% of your effort will be focused on data rather than the algorithm in the end.
Sure. Yeah, getting clean, right, and usable data as opposed to messy data. I recently used the analogy. I was asked for a comment on AI. And I use the analogy of a driverless car. I think probably most of us would be very comfortable having that car keep us within the lane, follow the car in front of us at a proper distance, and slow down when it needs to. In other words, the repetitive tasks. And it's nice to have those removed. As Max pointed out earlier, and Frederic as well, we're dealing with so much data now that the repetitive math is crippling. We can't do all the repetitive math. But at the same time, I don't want my autonomous car, my driverless car, to decide if I should play golf or go surfing this morning. Like that's a strategic decision that I still want to make. And I think that's kind of the same way as you mentioned. I think there's people that talk about AI replacing people, and I think it probably does replace people in the brute force of doing repetitive tasks. But I think if you don't ask it the right question, in other words, we're going to have to tell it what we want to know. If you don't ask it the right question, you don't get the results you're looking for, right? And you can actually get the opposite. And I think of the quick story about Amazon and using AI to sort through their applications and sort through CVs. And someone had the bright idea of taking gender out of the process to get gender bias out of the process. Well, AI wants to replicate the existing results, right? And so what it was doing was, obviously there was some gender bias in their process. So AI was going out and saying, okay, if you're not going to tell me if it's a man or a woman, then I'm going to start figuring out, are these male names or female names? Are these all women schools? So AI did this brilliant thing, which was go out and find new information to be able to get Amazon to the destination. Unfortunately, that wasn't where Amazon wanted to end up, right? So I think there's always going to have to be a person involved in the process until it can decide if I should go surfing or play golf. I think that it's really an understanding of how to make it perform at its capabilities. No doubt about it. I think you're absolutely right. Where do you see it going? Like, what are some of the, if you wanted to kind of scare somebody with a future conversation, what would you say? I mean, what are the things that you think are the most, innovative but still probably likely to happen kind of applications?
But well, I think there are a lot, as I said, a full plethora of different applications you can apply to all the different phases of the user journey, or even at a different steps of the value chain of value. What I could see as the main trends could be, first, experience personalization, which is one of the main topics right now, and it's already happening in a lot of different areas, and I don't see why in hospitality it shouldn't happen. Maybe because there is still a lot of the human involved, in the sense that, of course, when you go to the hotel, you anyway expect to have a person to talk to, although in Japan you can find some interesting cases of hotels just run by robots. But in general, you expect that, so you should be able to have this kind of algorithms, maybe to, for example, suggest the person at the counter, to greet the person with the name automatically without even having him to introduce himself. Or you could already have all the information prepared because it has been pre-processed, and then of course having that person just maybe take the key, or even just use the data, the biometrical data that is stored somewhere in a safe place, and following all the security protocols, to access directly without even the need to have a key. But you're always talking about machine learning. What can be interesting is also okay, so someone actually closed my camera.
We lost you. Oh, you're back. Hello.
And the other one that can be quite interesting is even in revenue management. So using algorithms, machine learning algorithms, in order to have decision support systems that can help you to optimize, in particular when you have lots of data. Indeed, machine learning finds its most important application and deployment, where you have so many data that human beings cannot make a sense out of it. And then you can use even unsupervised approaches in order to find patterns and clustering different kinds of data, and that will help you to make decisions. Or even other kinds of application you can have is on the rate occupancy. So you could take into account many different details that usually maybe are out of sight for people working maybe in that field, because of course you have to do you have to accomplish so many tasks that you don't have the time to check all the information at every time, and having algorithms gathering that information for you. And then the last one, maybe which is my favorite, is the reputation management. And what that was Max actually also already mentioned, and I was very happy to hear that, because it's one of my favorite examples. So, for example, you can have algorithms who are mining data on the social media, on the social networks, talking about your hotels or your services, and you can automatically analyze them and understand what's the sentiment, so the balance, and if it's positive or negative, and maybe even what kind of emotion was expressed in those words. And that will help you maybe to understand what's good, what's wrong, without having to receive a direct feedback, and also controlling how reputation propagates through the social networks.
Yeah, I mean,
Cool.
Scott, if I can chime
amazing.
in, if I can chime in just quickly.
Yeah, please do.
I mean,
Yeah.
First of all, before this whole coronavirus pandemic, in the United States, there were 1 million open positions in hospitality. And these are positions that with no takers, no candidates. 1 million. I mean, there were a total of 7 million open jobs, if you will, in the United States. Unemployment 3.4% and so forth. But what I'm driving at is the following, is that after the whole pandemic goes away, and it will. I mean, I have been through 5 different pandemics and global scares like the one that we're experiencing. We always bounce back. We bounce back with a vengeance, if you will. So the industry will rebound very vigorously and very quickly. The question is the following: how do you fill in all of those, I would say, open positions? And then what we are witnessing here, at least in the United States, first of all of the repetitive jobs, all of these mundane and repetitive jobs, all of the dangerous jobs, all of the jobs that do not involve a creative thought, if you will. Those jobs will definitely be automated, will go to the robots, will go to the self-check-in kiosks. And I firmly believe that ultimately that's where the whole industry is moving toward. For example, housekeeping, a typical housekeeping job consists of 175 tasks. Robots can do 150 of those 175 tasks today. And the way that I see it is not 100% robots, but it will be robots supervised by a human or by humans who would complete those 25 tasks which robots cannot do at this point. But 5 years from now, 10 years from now, housekeeping will be gone as a profession in hospitality. Check-in will be gone as a profession in hospitality. So in this sense, we are talking about automating all of the mundane tasks, and on the other hand, that are simply not demeaning to a human being. So having an education, focusing on what's next and next generation technologies. I mean, from AI to automation to robotics to blockchain to Internet of Things. This is where the future is in our industry, and I believe that a master's degree in digital transformation can provide exactly those skills for people to think broader, to think deeper, and to think into the future, and not and not learning how to do hoteling, if you will, the old-fashioned way, like it was done in Switzerland back in 1821.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, that's a perfect analogy, Max. It's a perfect analogy. So, as before we wrap up, I wanted to address a question. And Max, I think I'll start with you, but I think Frederic, you might also chime in, and Mauricio, certainly if you have an opinion as well. But there was a question from Fred, and Fred, I'm unfortunately not going to try to say your last name because I know that I'll do it wrong. But he said he wants to know if we see hotels being as dependent upon OTAs in the future, or do we see really tech enabling us to kind of reestablish the direct connection as being the predominant connection with our customers?
Well,
I'll go to you first, Max. What do you think?
Let me, I mean, in Europe, independent hotels get 20% of their online room nights direct and 80% from the OTAs. 20 versus 80. I mean, this is so ridiculous. It's just painfully ridiculous, if you will. And the main reason why it's happening, actually, there are several reasons, but one of them is hoteliers not understanding the customer digital journey as we described it in one of the slides, from the dreaming phase to the planning phase, to the booking phase, experiencing, and so forth. This is the first thing. And then investing in which of those phases of the customer journey. And of course, you have to invest in all of them in order to engage, acquire, and then retain the customer. The second thing is repeat business. Only 10 to 15% of guests at independent hotels are repeat guests versus 50+% for branded hotels. Why? Because branded hotels, the major hotel chains like Accor, for example, have very robust, very professionally done loyalty program with points. For independent hotels, you cannot have a point-based system, but you can have a guest appreciation system. For example, since 1995, Hotels.com, one of the OTAs part of Expedia, they have had a guest appreciation, like a customer appreciation loyalty program with certain perks and so forth. And the last 18 years already, they have a very simple, it transformed into a very simple system. You stay 10 room nights, you get the 11th room night free. How difficult it is for an independent hotel to adopt a similar system? Do you know how many independent hotels have a system like this, like a very simple reward program? Almost zero, 1 or 2%.
Almost none.
So that's my point. It's the lack of understanding of the customer journey and how each phase connects to the next one. Because if you don't play, for example, in the dreaming phase, you will have very few people that enter the planning phase for your hotel. And if you don't have a lot of people in the planning phase, there will be very few people that will be in the booking phase for your hotel. We talk about directly. And then if you don't engage them, if you don't retain them, many of those people will not come back to your hotel. So this is the lack of understanding how our future and present customers are moving through the internet and are planning the trips.
Cool. Okay, so guys, we're running up on time, so I'm going to go through and ask everybody for kind of a closing word of wisdom. But I wanted to actually, Max, you and I are going to have to write down something and stick it in an envelope someplace safe. But I think that the reason that this degree is probably most relevant can be explained very well with the concept that you just mentioned. We need leaders that understand how to digitally transform companies. We need leaders that understand how to take advantage of the technology that's out there. And the reason I say that is because probably most people are familiar with Roomba, right? The little round robot vacuum cleaner. That you can go on YouTube and watch people's cats ride them for several hours at night when you're bored.
Yeah.
But think about what a wonderful invention that would be for a hotel. The housekeeper finishes all of her other functions. It typically takes her about 5 minutes to vacuum. If you really think about it, they vacuum in a certain way so there's no footprints. Imagine if instead of spending that 5 minutes in the room, if they went bloop, they dropped a Roomba and then went back and picked it up before they went on to their next room and did the same thing. And yet I only know of a couple hotels in the world that employ that technology. So it's a very traditional business that in many cases mixes like oil and water with digitalization and with transition and some of those kind of things. So we need leaders that can help people understand that will keep hospitality and yet bring technology into the fray to make hospitality better. Because I think a number of us would agree, on a leisure trip, when I've got some time, I don't want to get my key from an ATM. I want to talk to a person. I want to start a relationship with someone that can help me with the lunch reservation later on during the weekend. That's just kind of how I am as a traveler. So it'll be really interesting to see where that technology truly gets implemented and how much of it is guest facing versus employee experience facing and stuff like that. So let me just kind of ask everybody kind of for a wrap up word of wisdom. So Maurice, I'm going to go to you first since I'm going to start on the right hand side. What one piece of advice would you have for someone that is kind of in their early 20s, kind of beginning looking at careers and thinking about possibly going into an area that you're an expert in? What advice would you give that person?
I think that as Max said before, to stay relevant, it is important to understand those technologies, not on, of course, on a technical level, but on a utility level. In the sense, you have to be able to understand how these things work to make your vision and to be able to elaborate a strategy, and then, of course, to execute it. So what's important today is to stay curious, to be curious, try to understand and see also what other people are doing, even in different domains, and try to learn and try to apply. That's probably the main thing.
Yeah. So no, I think if I could paraphrase, to be a good leader, you have to be an educated consumer of technology, right? You have to know what it's capable of. You don't have to know how to do it all. But you have
technology
to know
you have to be you don't have to be a techie, you have to be a technologist, meaning understanding and applying technology in business and the business side of technology. That's what a technologist is.
Cool.
So
okay, Frederic, final word. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Max. I didn't mean to cut you off. All right.
Yeah, just I mean, listen, I have master's degree in undergraduate and master's degree in hospitality. That's where I started. 15 years in the industry. And when the internet came in '95, I abandoned all of the brick and mortar businesses that I was doing. I had a business with 50 employees already in New York City. And I created my first internet startup, travelbreak.com, then Well Media Technologies, which was the first third-party CRS, similar to what the Core now has, The Edge, or Synexis, or iHotelia. We were the precursor of all of those. And then next guest, which is the company for the last 20 years with 150 employees. But what I'm driving at is the following. The technology, understanding of technology and the digital provides tremendous competitive advantages to any young person today. Without it, you will be one of the many. With knowledge of digital technology and how digital technology can transform the operations at a hotel, everything from guest engagement, marketing, to revenue management, to the actual operations at the property, to the loyalty program and retention and so forth. If you understand that, then you will have a tremendous competitive advantage over everybody else. So that's why I believe that a master's degree like this gives people a chance to become not one of the many leaders, but to become unique leaders that will be sought after and will be solicited by many the hospitality companies, and that can make a tremendous career out of it in the industry, servicing the industry as leaders, founders, and leaders of internet startups, of technology startups, servicing the industry, and so forth. But that's grab your moment in time, and this is a unique chance, I would say, to advance far above your peers, and again to create an amazing career for yourself.
Yeah, I would say, sort of to sum up what you just said, I do think it creates a really incredible competitive advantage for someone who's getting ready to start a career in the industry today.
Absolutely.
It's the skill that many hotel companies are really working very hard to breed internally, because they're not finding a credible source that they can get people from the outside. So Frederic, so let me come back to you. We'll give you kind of sort of the last word, and then we'll wrap up, because we've actually run a little bit past the time that we thought we would have.
Yeah,
But what advice would you have? You've had a
yeah,
successful career. Where would you go?
Yeah, I'm going to be fast. I think we are running out of time. I will have two quick messages, and especially because I know we have students and young professionals listening to us today. I think it's really important not to forget the clients in there. We have been talking a lot about technology, about digital. It's so true. Everything that Max, you, Scott, and Maurice, you have said is so true. And at the same time, let's not forget that we work in hospitality. We have to be hospitable, and the human side of all this has to remain. Otherwise, we are going to be dead, especially when we go to 4 or 5-star hotels where you expect a service. Let's not forget that you still need to be a hotelier before anything if you want to be successful in hospitality. That's number one. And number two, I want to say that we have been talking a lot about technologies and being able to be so good at understanding data, etc. What's very important as well, and this is something that I'm sure in Les Roches we are going to insist a lot on, is this capacity to make young professionals to become great, to understand and to be able to get some insights from the data and from the machine, so that they can give recommendations and clear, let's say, messages to the owners and to the ones who need to decide and put a budget on it. What's so important is that we get people tomorrow who are able to decrypt what the machine is saying, because the machine is going to give you some data and some figures. It's up to you after that as a human being to be able to say what it means. Do we need to go for it or we don't go for it? And that's going to be still within us. And it's very important that skill is even more developed tomorrow at Les Roches and everywhere.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks. Thank you, Frederic. So, Mario, I'm pretty much going to wrap up. Though I'd like to thank, first of all, our panelists, Mauricio Cayón, Frederic Toito, and Max Starkov. Thank you very much, guys, for your insight. And for those of you that are still with us on the call, the one thing that I would say is a lot of what you've heard today is a key if this is the interest you have from a career perspective. For me personally, I'm sort of smart, but not real smart. I would say smart enough. But I was willing to work hard, and getting involved in the commercial side of the hospitality industry let me live all over the world, and it's brought me to Switzerland now. So if you're thinking about it, at least for me personally, it's got a warm spot, and I think for the folks that were on the panel as well, I think all of them would encourage you to pursue that direction. So with that said, thanks very much. You can get some information. Mario, I'm going to let you come on at the end and kind of wrap up the whole process. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the panel, and if anybody has any questions, I look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending. There have been a lot of questions. I've said to everybody that's pending questions that they're able to contact the speakers on LinkedIn and through us. There's a lot of interesting things. Everybody's asked if they will receive a copy of the slides. that's indeed the case. We will send the slides to all the participants. In the slides, there'll be the link that I've shared where you can find more information, more contact details for any question you may have about this master and about digitalization in the hospitality industry. I also want to invite you to our upcoming webinars. We have a new webinar that will happen on LinkedIn Live, so live on the LinkedIn platform. We are testing this new methodology of training on the 31st of March about this master in hospitality strategy and digital transformation. At La Roche, we also offer an MBA, and there will be an informative webinar on the 9th of April, 12 and 6 to cover the whole world, where you can learn more if you're interested in an MBA with La Roche. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. Thanks to the panelists. Thank you, Scott. Have a good evening, everybody. Afternoon, morning, whatever
Take care,
you are.
guys. Stay safe.
All the best to
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.